Most ancient coins had a really tough life before they came to the nice, soft trays of our collections. Not only did some of these poor bastards have to circulate for over 100 years or more, but people did all sorts of nasty things with them. They scratched all kinds of marks on them, stamped them with extra symbols, added punch marks with chisels, deep cuts to see its insides, and even defaced them as political statements. And in your journey as a coin collector, you will most likely come across plenty of coins bearing these marks, stamps, wounds, let's say, made on your coin by someone many years ago. Quite a few collectors dismiss these coins because they don't look perfect and fresh out of the mint. However, I think they're super intriguing. So how about we have like a little tutorial today? Let's look at some of the main types of, how may I put it, scars you can find on an ancient coin, and why did these things happen to these coins. Let's get started. And we begin with test cuts, and the name basically describes what it is, right? It's a cut made with some sort of chisel to a coin to see if the insides of the coin are made out of precious metal and not just the surface. Plated forgeries were very common in the ancient world. It was basically a copy of the original coin, however, it was made out of cheap metal at the center, and it was covered with a thin layer of precious metal, giving it the appearance of an authentic piece, at least until the surface layer started to peel off, revealing the fraud, but by then the counterfeiter would have had time to flee. In fact, some of the earliest plated counterfeits are dated to right after the invention of the first coins. Here on your screen now I'm showing you an Athenian tetradrachma with a fair amount of wear and at least 3 test cuts. It must have traveled a lot. I mean, we can see it traveled a lot for the wear it has. Test cuts are particularly common in silver coins from the classical period. So we're talking about the 480s to the 350s BC. Although there are certainly test cuts on earlier coins and later ones from the Hellenistic period, but I personally see a larger number of such cuts in coins from the classical period, which actually kinda makes sense, considering this was a period of political fragmentation, and this lack of an overarching state enforcing a single coinage over a large territory naturally led to a certain mistrust between merchants of different cities. Because you see, courts of justice from a city-state were mostly reserved for its own citizens. So if you were a foreign merchant and you ended up being paid with a plated forgery, there wasn't a lot in regards to legal actions that you could enforce to maybe like revert a transaction or prosecute whoever gave you a fake coin. So, for example, this stater struck at Pamphylia that we're seeing now, struck between 460 and 430 BC, must have crossed its borders to some foreign merchant who received these coins as a payment. And apparently at first he did not trust this coin, and he had to make this cut that you see here to see and to check the insides of the coin for the metal. And fortunately for him, it looks like the coin is of good silver all the way to its center. Sometimes these test cuts can give a certain creepy look to a coin. Look at this example of an Athenian tetradrachma. Good lord, look what they have done to Athena. There's like this massive gash crossing all of her head. It looks brutal from her mouth to the back of her head. It looks so violent. I've seen quite a few Athenian coins with test cuts, and this was not simply a cut done for checking purposes. Someone really wanted to deface Athena, or show their anger to the Athenians with this cut. And it doesn't get much better on the reverse. Here we have 2 more cuts. One splitting the head of the poor little owl in half, like if it was executed with an axe, and the third cut right on the poor bird's backside. That's such a violent looking coin. It wasn't just test cuts. You see, when a coin went out of its native territory and started circulating on foreign markets, in many instances they couldn't just begin circulating and that's it. They had to be, if they were supposed to be accepted in this area without having to be exchanged, they had to be validated for circulating at their destination. This validating process was a source of revenue for cities that were important trade hubs. This obligation to revalidate the coin was accompanied by a small fee that had to be paid. This is why you will find lots of coins with one or more stamps on them. These are called countermarks, and these are the marks of this revalidation in a foreign land. So here, for example, what we have is an Achaemenid siglos from around the years 450 to 420s BC. And as you can see, to the left of this image of the king, we have this circular countermark with what I believe is a letter gamma in lowercase. It actually makes perfect sense to find such a symbol on these coins. It's a Greek letter, and the Persians at this time issued this silver siglos mostly to trade with the Greeks. So this might indicate this coin once crossed the border from the Persian Empire into some Greek city-state. There's another one at the top of the coin as well, another countermark. However, I can't really identify what's on it. Notice the difference from the last coin. The countermarks added to this coin were put in places where it did not disrupt the design of the Persian King of Kings, which on one hand shows a certain level of respect from whoever made these, but also let's remember the symbol was supposed to show that this coin was made out of good metal, and the siglos was a very prestigious coin. So they didn't want to deface the coin so much as people wouldn't be able to see that this was a good siglos anymore. On the reverse, notice we have another test cut. Whoever checked this coin might have had enough reverence for the Persian overlords not to deface the image of the king, but he was still suspicious enough to make a test cut just to check for the silver. He decided, however, to make it on the reverse rather than on the obverse, where there's no design. So this could be yet another show of respect for the issuing authorities by not defacing the image of the king. It's quite interesting to see these little shows of like realpolitik in a sense. This other example has a countermark at the same place. However, this time it doesn't look like a letter. It might be just my imagination, but I think this countermark is so cute. It looks like a small ram or maybe a goat. And on the reverse, we don't have any test cuts. But I believe I can see another countermark. This time it's a little crescent next to the incus punch at the center. And you want to see a lot of countermarks? Here's my Athenian tetradrachma. There are at least 3 countermarks on the obverse, on the cheek and neck of Athena. Some of these seem to be Aramaic letters, which could mean this coin at one time circulated on the area of the ancient Levant. The Athenians mostly issued these tetradrachma as a way to export their silver. So despite all of the nice, perfectly preserved owls you see on the numismatic market, in reality, a lot of the coins that survived have all of these ugly countermarks on it because these coins were meant to circulate a lot and they were very prestigious, so everyone everywhere accepted them. And if 3 countermarks on the obverse were not enough, on the reverse it has 3 more, meaning this coin crossed at least 6 different borders, which is absolutely crazy to think about where this coin has been to. And surprise, surprise, we have yet another test cut here as well. If I was the one making these cuts, I would at least go to the reverse and go at this area at the edges where there's a little bit of extra material. But no, most of the test cuts are at the center, like at the owl or Athena's face. So it's a bit funny. There's no way to make a test cut in these coins without making it look like the owl or Athena have been brutally murdered. I mean, look at the owl. It has been decapitated. I mean, nearly decapitated. Its head is attached to its neck by this tiny bit of remain of neck on the right side. It looks so violent. Countermarks were also added for other reasons, such as to revalidate coins to different values or to make them legal tender in certain areas, like for example a bronze coin that was imported into an area where it was not native from, so they would stamp it again to make it money once more, or even to revalidate a coin once it had been worn flat from so much circulation and people couldn't distinguish which denomination it was anymore. Here's a cool example on your screen. We have no idea what this coin was originally. However, we see it has been countermarked with this fascinating mark of the 10th Legion. We see its initials, L, the number 10, and then F, which stands for Legio Decima Fretensis, meaning it was validated to be used probably as money inside a Roman military camp of this legion I've just mentioned. There are lots of different countermarks associated with legionary contexts, which show there must have been this small internal economy on Roman military bases that used maybe like their own local countermarked currency. Maybe they were like a system of tokens only valid amongst the troops for small transactions. It's interesting. It opens up a lot of space for research on that. Next, we have bankers' marks. These are similar to countermarks, but they seem to be somewhat exclusive to a Roman context. A banker's mark is generally a punch, meaning it's like a negative mark that goes inside the coin. Here in this Mark Antony denarius, we can see above the galley, this example has like these 3 disjointed straight lines. They were added mostly to silver denarii and were meant to show the coin had been checked by an argentari, a banker and a money assayer for the quality of the coin. These were then deposited at what we could describe as a Roman type of proto-bank, where people could hold a balance at this bank, people could conduct transactions through these local banks without having to handle lots of coins, and they could even lend these denarii at a fixed interest. On the reverse, check it out, we have another banker's mark, a different one. We have this big T right at the center. This particular kind of denarius, issued by Mark Antony, is famous for circulating for a long period of time. So it isn't surprising to see that it was deposited at a bank more than once. Here's another beautiful example in this denarius of Emperor Augustus. Check out at the right of his face, right next to his nose. This one looks more like a countermark than a banker's mark, but since these marks on denarii specifically are generally attributed to bankers, this is not what we would call a countermark. It is indeed another banker's mark. If we go to the reverse, we can even see that little circle, like a projection to the right side of the flan. It looks like the coin was maybe placed against a flat surface before striking that countermark / banker's mark, and the force of the punch went all the way through to the other side of the coin, and it left this round, like little pimple projecting out of the coin. Quite cool. Now, people did not only add marks on coins for practical reasons, like checking the metal. They also defaced coins as political statements. Here we have once again another Achaemenid siglos, and look what have they done to the image of the King of Kings. He was completely whacked away. Maybe some Athenian merchant was enacting revenge to what they had done with that poor Athenian tetradrachma from before with the 3 super deep cuts. Defaced coins are actually relatively rare, especially precious metal ones like this one we have here, because it was precisely the symbols on the coin that ensured this piece of metal was issued by a state authority and was from the purity and weight it was supposed to be. So when someone hacked away at a coin like this, it was like transforming this coin once again into a piece of bullion, a piece of precious metal. It is generally more common to find such, let's say, numismatic vandalism on bronze coins or coins of smaller value, because then your political statement wasn't that expensive for you. And of course, merchants were more likely to accept a bronze coin even if it had a little bit of damage, while it was quite likely they would turn away a damaged precious metal coin. Now, it was not only private individuals disgruntled with the political situation who defaced coins. There were some official instances of it as well. This amazing coin from the city of Stratonicea used to feature the portrait of two emperors, the brothers Caracalla and Geta. Well, they did not like each other very much, and Caracalla not only had his brother assassinated, but he also forced the Senate to issue a damnatio memoriae. This was an edict where all public records of Geta were erased. His statues were toppled, many of his coins were melted down and restruck, his name was erased from public inscriptions, and in some special cases like this one, the coins from the cities were withdrawn for the sole purpose of the face of Geta being erased. Even from the coins, imagine that. It looks like after the image of Geta was thoroughly erased from the coin, you can see like the scratch marks, it was then countermarked, as we can see like a little countermark with the helmeted bust of Roma at the top of the design, sort of like proving this coin had been passed by officials and then reissued, and only then they were allowed back into circulation. That's a fascinating example of this practice of public damnation of the Romans, sort of like taken to its last consequences, because imagine that, the work that was involved in erasing his face from every single coin, even if it wasn't a particularly big city, still, these were made in the thousands. Imagine the work just to erase the portrait. I think these are fascinating coins. Yes, they aren't as pretty as a mint state piece, but they show these coins made what they were supposed to do. They were money, they circulated, they were part of people's lives, and they were handled by real people. Do you have a coin with like a countermark or a test cut? Let us know in the comment section down below. So I hope you enjoyed yet another episode. Leave a like and consider maybe subscribing and becoming a member if you did. Happy collecting, and I'll see you soon. Let me give a special thank you to all of my amazing channel members and Patreons for their generous support. This channel would not be the same without your help. And if you would like to be part of this list, have early access to my videos when they are uploaded to YouTube, and a series of other perks, make sure to check out my Patreon page and my members tab on YouTube. Thank you very much.